about to begin. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. It's gonna be bloody fun. We're gonna kill everyone. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show. With lots of blood and lots of guts. Two horror fanatics and rock and roll nuts. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show.
Well, we've got a fun one to discuss with you right now. If you haven't seen on our socials, and it's possible that you haven't, it's also possible that you have, your beloved devil, your beloved vampire, have been invited back to New Jersey HorrorCon, my friend. Seems that we made a good first impression. They appreciated what we did for them, and we do appreciate that on their end. They've extended us another invitation to do some press, and that would be in August, coming up in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks from today, actually. So, I mean, depending on when this, as we're recording this, it's 2 weeks. It might be a little bit less by the time it comes out for you fangs, but as of right now, recording this, it will be in 2 weeks. We will be back.
Absolutely. But again, shout outs and gratitudes to New Jersey HorrorCon for the invitation back. We're very, very excited to continue this relationship with them. We definitely had a great time in basically the day that we were with them last time, but we're going to rock out 2 of them for this convention to have a great time. And I mean, they've got a really good, guest list that they're putting together so far, my friend, that they haven't finalized everything quite yet, because they even said, as of the recording of this, have even said themselves that there are still a few people that they are still waiting to hear from. But at least just as of right now, the top of their list that they have promoted are like CJ Graham from Friday the 13th, Tom Matthews from Return of the Living Dead, the great Bill Moseley, who we love to death from Devil's Rejects, House of a Thousand Corpses, Alex Vincent from Chucky and Child's Play, and of course the great Ken Fourier of Dawn of the Dead and Halloween and Rob Zombie-ness.
Oh, yeah, and that's the cool thing about this con too, even though it is primarily a horror con because it's called New Jersey HorrorCon. They've got an interesting reunion being brewed at the New Jersey HorrorCon, which is the Revenge of the Nerds. We're gonna have a lot of nerds. There's gonna be a lot of nerds. It's gonna be like, I'd imagine that, whenever we go to a con and Ric Flair's there, all you hear is woo, woo, all of the time. We're gonna hear nothing but nerds the whole entire weekend. It's gonna be fun for about 5 minutes, and then eventually it's probably get a little annoying. Same way with the woos. I like doing the Ric Flair woos, but wooing 365 days a year, 7 days a week is not always fun. So eventually the woos, it's like that guy that does Freebird at the concert. It's always funny when you got one guy that says Freebird, but when they all start saying Freebird or every other song is Freebird, it's like, okay, now you lost its magic. But yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool. They have a really good, selection of pretty much almost all the nerds are gonna be there. I mean, I think pretty much all of them except for Anthony Edwards. It's pretty much a big cast of the main nerd guys. I mean, it's gonna be pretty interesting with that. And they've got the Nerds Bully, who eventually in Nerds 2 became the nerd with them. But that's why everybody's gonna be screaming nerds. But yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm a huge Nerds fan. Like I said, I'm a huge Booger fan. So anytime anybody burps really long, I always think of Booger and in the movie. And anytime I have to go pee and it seems like I've been peeing for about 4 or 5 minutes, I always think of the scene with Greg Gibb on there where he's like in the bathroom for about 45 minutes peeing. I love that scene. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Even though a lot of the actors who are in the Revenge of the Nerds movies have done horror movies themselves. Like the actors have done horror movies. I think it's still kind of cool that it's a Revenge of the Nerd kind of a reunion, even though it's, like I said, Revenge of the Nerds is about as far away from a horror movie as you can get. But I love it. It's campy 80s. We love campy 80s.
Oh yeah, but here's the thing though, too, brother, is yes, they're doing this big Return of the Revenge of the Nerds reunion, but again, it is New Jersey HorrorCon. But if you're into reunions, if you're a fan of a franchise, they're giving you actually a huge bang for your buck as far as reunions. I mean, there's 4 high profile reunions for this because we just spoke about Revenge of the Nerds. They're doing a huge chunk, similar to Hocus Pocus last time we were there, but they're doing a huge chunk of the Monster Squad cast. They're doing a ton of people from Dream Child, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, and for myself, because I love this franchise, is Night of the Demons, and finally going to get to meet Amelia. And hey, we both love our Linnea Quigley, and she'll be there as well. But they're definitely going in with some bang for your buck as far as reunions or casts in bulk. If you're one of those autograph seekers that wants to really fill up a poster and not have to go to 6 cons to do it.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I said, with when the last time when they had the Hocus Pocus, and they have a couple people here and there, like when we had our Lost Boys, they had 2 of the Lost Boys there for the last one. So yeah, with this one, it's like you said, it's kind of like a reunion of all these great movies and throughout, and it's like I said, it's a lot. It's not very often that you get. You might get a couple reunions. You'll be at a con and there'll be like 2 people from this franchise. There'll be another 2 or 3 people from that franchise. There might be 2 people from another franchise. They might be one franchise that they kind of go heavily on and maybe get like 5 or 6. But you don't see it too often where it's like this. I mean, it's like I said. I mean, with the Nerds, there was what? Let's see. I think there was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like 7 cast members, I believe, or somewhere around that area. There's like 7 cast members for that. You got the Monster Squad. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Monster Squad people. Night of the Demons, you got like 4 or 5. The Nightmare on Elm Street, there's like 7 or 8 of them that are casted throughout that. So I mean, like, you put those together and you're like, okay, you'd think that this con is basically full with just the reunions, and then like I said, they still added more people. Like you said, C.J. Graham, you got Ken Foree, you got Bill Moseley, they got Samantha Mathis from Pump Up the Volume, Costas from the Saw movies, and yeah, it's insane. Like, and you keep getting more and more of these like great people and stuff like that. They're having a huge like behind the scenes kind of reunion too with the Terrifier people. There's a lot of Terrifier 2 people that were either parts of the movie, producers, writers, and all this kind of like stuff like that. So I mean, that's even a reunion, another big reunion right there, is a sort of a Terrifier kind of reunion, not specifically just the actors, but like more like the writers and the producers of that series.
Yeah, and it's funny, Bud, because we were talking about this a while ago because we had been to the last New Jersey HorrorCon, and they set up the Hocus Pocus corner very well, where it was, what was it? I believe it was 5 cast members from Hocus Pocus kind of around this corner, and then they had the 3 Lost Boys, people between, Chance and Jameson and G. But there wasn't a ton in the way of like major reunions at the last New Jersey HorrorCon. But again, there's 4 major reunions that total 8, 7, 6, and 5, I believe, in total people. And you and I were talking about like just how they would set up the room for that. Because HorrorCon last year was still a 1 dominant autograph room, and then of course you had the other vendor areas. But it's just going to be very interesting to see how this goes, where people are either going to be very snugged in, or they're going to have to find a secondary room that maybe they dedicate solely to what I would probably suggest as Revenge of the Nerds, since that's the
Yeah.
majority in eight cast members, that you would have a room specifically for Revenge of the Nerds, that would open up, in theory, 8 tables out of the main room. But it's pretty crazy, man, because again, just like we spoke of, there's 10 or so other various guests, like our friend, Lord Damien from last year's New Jersey HorrorCon is going to be back there. Father Evil, who's been all over the horror scene, and a lot of people know him, he's going to be there. There's the female model, like alternative model that was at the last con. Fallon is going to be back. And honestly, our boys in American Grim are going to be there, and they always have a huge display. It'll be like when AC Slade had his Catfight Coffee thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious I wonder if AC is going to be there. But then again, when we were at that convention center that it's at in New Jersey, it's like that where they had like 2 or 3 other conventions that were going on at the same time that were other conventions. So it's a possibility that maybe because they've got the bigness and the bigger this, maybe they got a bigger section of that con instead. So it might be in a different spot than the normal spot. I'm kind of curious to see that. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at, like you said, we're talking about that. I mean, another reunion that I'm kind of doing with, as of right now, it's only a 2-person reunion. But you've got some Keith Coogan's "Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead" that everybody always says from Jay and Silent Bob movie. Hey, it's Keith Coogan from "Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead." But they're bringing him and his younger sister from Adventures in Babysitting, which I'm a huge fan of that movie.
The dishes are done, man.
Yeah, dishes are done, man.
I love Adventures of Babysitting, and I'm a big "Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead" fan, and it's too because there's we've talked about other people who are just members of the horror community that do the con circuit on the regularity, and somebody who's in like "Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead" is somebody like Danielle Harris, who was in that movie, and she's a regular on the con circuit. She's all over the place. So fans of "Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead" can come out and meet Keith and talk to him about the movie, get their DVD or a poster signed, and then probably wouldn't have to wait very long for Danielle to come back around to do some more cons and stuff, and they'd be able to add, her to something like that. So that's always something very, very cool. And again, it's great when you can knock out things in bulk. As you and I have always discussed, from our long careers of going to cons as fans, is that if you're very committed to certain, movies, you really have to plan accordingly and stuff, like, because Scream, for example, is really probably taken over as probably the dominant franchise now because of all of these movies coming out as far as talent at cons. I mean, so many cast members in bulk at one time, and you really have to plan for that. Just like when we did New Jersey HorrorCon last time, we're of course going to be professional. We were guests of the con, and we are always going to put professionalism and our product and our jobs first. But absolutely, you're going to stick me in a area of multiple Hocus Pocus people. Of course, I'm going to dedicate part of my experience to wanting to meet people from Hocus Pocus, which I absolutely did, and it was fantastic. But yeah, you definitely have to make plans for that. So Fangs, make sure that you guys are taking that into consideration. If you're doing the whole weekend, of course, you do have an advantage of that. But if for whatever reason, whether it be time or budget, and you only have like a day, make sure that you plan accordingly. Early is probably going to be a thing because, like I said, Revenge of the Nerds, that's 8 people and, 6 people for like, Nightmare on Elm Street and again, 7 for Monster Squad and stuff like that. So you definitely have to pick your battles when it comes to that thing, especially if you're also somebody like me who's really into merch and loves to see what is being sold by various vendors. You can, but you can't always just dedicate all of your time to the celebs themselves, or you're not going to be able to shop.
Yeah. That's like cool. And like I said, you never know who you're gonna get or when you're gonna get. So like you said, you're a fan of like, Adventures in Babysitting, or even like I said, Keith Coogan and, Don't Tell, and you got Daniel Harris, I'm kind of hoping, because I know he does cons, but going into that in Babysitting, I'm kind of hoping that they get
About Vincent, brother.
yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio. Well, also it was in Men in Black and a bunch of other movies. A possibility with the the hush hush quiet guests they haven't announced. Maybe we'll get lucky and get him, because I know he's on the circuit. But that's what's cool about going to these cons and stuff like that, is like you can always, and I said, yeah, you can go for these, like you were talking about the Scream ones and the bigger ones. But I mean, and you're always gonna have that at all these cons and stuff like that. But I like it where like it's ones like these. Like I would have never thought that, like, Revenge of the Nerds. I would have never really thought Revenge of the Nerds was going to be there, but that's awesome. But even like I said, Monster Squad. I know I've been to some other cons, where we've gotten Monster Squad people, but it's still cool that like you can get a Monster Squad reunion that it was like 30 years ago the movie was made, and still people will still want to go see it. Scream, I understand, because Scream has gone through generations, where there's the younger generation now that are getting into Scream because of the newer Screams. So like I kind of get that, but this is Monster Squad's like, you see these young kids going and getting excited to see these Monster Squad people, and I'm like, yeah, that movie came out before you were even born. Like,
You were even a thought.
yeah. So yeah, it's crazy to see in that, like, but it's cool though. It means like their parents like raised them on some good movies. I kind of like about this, the New Jersey Horror Con going into this, they get some amazing guests, and no discrediting any of the guests they get, but they kind of stay away from like the huge name ones, because you got to realize you get somebody like a Robert Englund. Yeah, everybody wants Robert Englund, but he cost probably, I would imagine, because I know how much he costs for us to go and meet him. So I could imagine how much it costs a con to contract him. And you got to realize, if you get a Robert Englund, and like you said, when you're talking about the Dreamcast that's going to be there, the Dreamchild cast. I was like, yeah, if you think about it, if they got Robert Englund, yeah, you could pretty much scrap almost everybody that's on that cast, maybe one other person. Where this is kind of cooler that you can get a lot of them, and then once you get all those people, then you can go and get go to a con, because Robert's always at cons.
Yeah.
He's at cons all over the place. As of right now, he's a really kind of, not saying easy guy, because you're gonna be waiting in line for a long time, which is insane. Of the genre, some of us aren't as well to do as some others, and that's not saying that those guys have it better, but you know what I mean. You just gotta kind of fill, and that's what I like about the filling that when we did the New Jersey Horror Con in April. It had that fill where, yeah, you had some cool names, and like people that we really wanted to see, but you didn't have those over the top big hitters. But like I said, and sometimes people might complain like, oh yeah, they don't have anybody super big or all that. But then again, like I said, if you had a Robert Englund in there, or you got a Heather Langenkamp, or let's say like what's her name, Neve Campbell from Scream or something like that, there goes the Monster Squad reunion people, or the Revenge of the Nerds people.
You're right, man. And the other thing too that we haven't really discussed too, that when it comes to planning your day and these experiences as well, is sometimes if you're new to cons, or if you just don't get out as much, or maybe it's just not as publicized, sometimes you're just not as aware of how much of a chatterbox some of these talents can be. So like, you already have, a really long line of people that want to meet Robert, but he's very gracious in talking to his fans, and always has been.
Yeah.
For example, when we were at New Jersey Horror Con back in April for Hocus Pocus, I got into the lines and I was knocking people out at a really good pace. And the funny thing was, the shortest line at the time was honestly Vanessa Shaw, who played Allison. And it was all good because they were all very close by to each other. But I think I just went to, Hollywood. I went to Omri Katz first, and then I think that was just the way I just happened to be moving, was like, Max, Binks, Danny, and so on. But the funny thing is while I didn't spend a lot of time in those lines, I pretty much shot right through them to a certain degree. All of a sudden, Vanessa's line got huge, and she talked to like everyone for like 20 minutes. It was crazy. I was watching this going like, this is nuts actually. But it was all good. We didn't lose an exorbitant amount of time standing in line for her, but like, you definitely realize that she appreciates the fans and cares about their fans and cares about their experience and how was your day. But it's kind of funny because sometimes if you don't know, you can be caught off guard or kind of screw yourself, or just something like that can like eat up your time. Like, of course, I really had to get adventurous and very strategic. And I got to say, I'm actually very proud of myself for how I moved my chess pieces to get to meet Mary Sanderson and get to meet Kathy Najimy, because the funny thing is she wasn't there for a while. I was always watching the line. She appeared, the line, her little boxed area filled up right away, and they were not letting anybody into that line. And I was trying to stay close by with a couple of other fans, and the security, hey, they're just doing their job. They're just doing what they were told. And I was kind of in the area, and they're like trying to tell people, like, you can't stand here. There's no more people in line. You can only come in and get in line when there's space to do so. And understandably, other fans were like, but if we wait for there to be space, that space can be filled. But we are here now. And they're not wrong. It's just a matter of the respect you show, a little bit of experience as well, and then just how you conduct yourself. Where for me, they're not stupid. They could tell what I was doing, but what I was doing was also being very aware of my surroundings, making sure I wasn't in the way. Anybody who needed to walk through the area, I wasn't blocking them. I wasn't making a scene, and I was simply keeping to myself. And sure enough, as soon as they were spacing the line, I was like the first person. They were like, come on in, get right up in there. They knew exactly what I was doing, and I think understood the chess pieces that I was moving around in that. And that's also just something to also keep in mind as well, is there's a lot of gratitude in a lot of the talent of various cons. So they want to hear about you. They want to appreciate that you're coming to see them and that something that they filmed meant so much to you and stuff. So that's always a little tricky situation as well when you get somebody who's already insanely popular but also wants to talk. You and I had an experience last year where we tried to meet Kiefer Sutherland. And while we did get to meet him because you and I did his pro photo op and he was fantastic and we were there, Mrs. Vamp was there, Mrs. Devil was there, and it was a great experience. Not so much for our autograph seeking. That has since been rectified, which is awesome. But for that particular weekend, we were so close, but the group right before us was the last group that they let in for the day. And so we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, on nuts. And sometimes that happens.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what you were saying too, because it's like, you were talking about, with Vanessa spending almost so much time with her fans, being truly like, I mean, she was just wonderful to talk to. She was hugging everybody, and just like the stories that we were talking about. Her and Felissa Rose was another one where her lines were always really long and took a while to get through because she likes to talk and she likes to interact with her fans a lot, which is, I mean, I get it as a fan, like when you want to meet somebody and you're standing in line, especially if you're only at a con for one day, you want to try to get as many people as you can want to get. And sometimes you got to wait a little longer than you want to. And then, like I said, I always like take that. I'm always happy when you get those, because I would rather it be super long lines waiting 18 hours to meet one person, as long as it's something like that. I had an experience where I got to go to a con in Philadelphia and get a autograph for my nephew at the time of Doctor Who. He was a huge Matt Smith fan. And I spent the whole entire Saturday, basically 12 hours in a line. They had so many people booked for his autograph session that literally he had to go, hi, and that was about it. Which to me, I didn't really care. I wasn't there for him. I'm not a huge Doctor Who fan. I'm not discrediting anybody who is a Doctor Who fan, but I never was a big fan of that. But it was for my nephew. But I felt bad for a lot of other people who are like dressed to the nine as Doctor who are huge Doctor Who fans and didn't get to have that experience that they would want to. Not saying that their experience was bad, because he wasn't, he wasn't unpleasant.
Oh yeah.
It was just they booked so many people there because his autographs were all pre-sold autographs. So they booked so many that it was like literally he had to just go, hey, and that was about it. Times where you're gonna meet somebody and you're only going there for one day, and you might not get the opportunity to meet that person. I mean, hell, there's conventions I've gone to where we went all 3 days and I still couldn't meet somebody because it was just insanely huge that you just you couldn't do it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, unless you're committed. If you're committed, then yeah, stay in that line, do it, but then don't complain later on that was your con experience. Like, oh, I hate this con, blah blah blah, this con sucks because I spent all day in just blah blah blah's line. Well, no one forced you to stay in that line the whole entire time. You got to gauge it. There's sometimes where it's like, yeah, if we were going to a convention and there's somebody that we really, really want, and it's a huge long line, you got to contemplate yourself. Okay, am I going to get in this person in this line or not? And then you got to think, okay, if I spend all this time in this line, there's a possibility that I might not get to meet them. So that's why, like we were talking about the Kiefer experience. Yes, it was a bummer that we didn't get to meet Kiefer Sutherland in person at that time to get our autographs. But that's another thing. If it's something you like, maybe you want to meet a guest. Like let's say, let's say you want to meet, one of the Revenge of the Nerds guy. Let's say we're gonna go Robert Carradine because he's probably the biggest actor wise of of that. So you want to meet him or you want to meet Booger, And let's say you go and you see those lines and you're like, oh man, I know I've seen him at cons before. His lines are insane. And you're like, if you really, really want to meet him and, if you can go without maybe going an autograph, I always tell everybody, do the pro photo ops, man. Gotcha. Even though you only get a couple of minutes with that, sometimes you get a little bit longer. We've done, sometimes, they're usually quick, get you in and out, but sometimes you get lucky and you might say hi and have a 2-second conversation. But at least even that 1-second conversation, like, hey, how you doing? My name is Ron. Oh, yeah. At least you get to say that you met this actor and the person that you admire in these movies, than to standing in line the whole entire time and maybe not get it, where you're going to be disappointed, but at least you get something out of it. So, I mean, like I said, especially when it comes to these cons, you got to you're going to shoot your shot sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't go in. Sometimes it does. But, that's what I said. You guys got to realize, okay, is it worth it? Okay, if this guy's going to be a 12-hour line, I'm going to be in that line the whole entire time. I'm only there for one day. Maybe I'll just say, I'll go meet 4 or 5 other people instead. And maybe another time that I get it. But I also say, too, if it's somebody that you really, really, really want to meet, go and do it, because unfortunately, just like everyday people, these actors are human. Unfortunately, some of them pass away and you don't get a chance to. So there's been a bunch of people that I've had opportunities to meet and go, oh, that line's way too long right now, or like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, a month down the line or a couple months down the line, they pass away and you're like, shit, man, I wish I would have met that person, or at least gone up to him and say hi or something like that. You know what I mean? So
Angus Scrimm story.
Yep.
Now, I went to a lot of cons that Angus was at, and I mean, dude, he's Angus Scrimm, and he's been in, not just from Phantasm, there's been other stuff that he's been in that I just thought he was just so great about, and I was like, damn. And it wasn't really just about lines. I was slightly the victim of kind of my own at the time, because Angus is also, we've been without him now for a while, and it was like, back when I was, green when it came to going to cons and stuff like that, and didn't realize things quite as much. So it's kind of like, oh, shoot. So even at times that his line wasn't ridiculous, I would just be like, hey, it's cool, oh, man, there's Angus Scrimm. That's so awesome. And then would just go about my business. And then, unfortunately, down the line, the news broke that he wasn't with us and stuff. And I was kind of like, oh, shoot, man. But from, like, Phantasm and Satanic and He's done a bunch of stuff outside the horror genre, like Bel Air and stuff like that. But he was also the narrator in Wishmaster, and I love Wishmaster. But like sometimes you do also run that risk and stuff. Like for example, a previous con that I went to, well, actually that we went to, dude, Tim Curry. There was no way that I was letting that pass me by. Not a snowball's chance in hell, man, because, it's well documented that, his health is of a certain level. And he was very sweet. He reached out to shake hands, and he was really, really cool. And I was so happy to do that pro photo op because he doesn't sign in person because it's too much for him to handle. But you can either buy a pre-signed item that you can definitely tell is signed by him, or you can send his handlers off with your item, and they will send it back to you. And so there are definitely those opportunities for sure when it comes to that kind of stuff. But he was probably my big, when it was announced, absolutely, I have to do this photo op, no questions asked. And he was actually very affordable too. But
I pulled that trigger really quick.
Yeah, I was like, I have to. Because heaven forbid, and Tim is very much still with us, but heaven forbid we were to lose him had I not done that. There'd have been no recovery. I would have staked my own heart. I would have.
Well, to piggyback on that one, that same con, I did the photo op with Tim Curry too, and there was another guest there that I'm the biggest fan in the entire world of, which was Pee Wee Herman. And, I got that photo op, and like I said, now that he passed away, I'm like, man, I'm super glad that I bit the bullet and said, yep, I'm doing this. Cause if it would have, down the line, because it wasn't soon right after, but like, shortly after, a couple of years later, I would have kicked myself in the ass being like, man, I had that chance to meet him, and I didn't pull the trigger. I mean, sometimes there are certain ones where it's like, if it's way over, like I said, if it's like way over like price wise, then just like all of us, we have the budget, we got daily lives, and we gotta you just still do. Or if it's just somebody that's a super super long line, you just don't want to spend the whole entire day. Do it. But like I said, if it's one of those ones where you have the money, especially with a photo op, because like those go. The first time I ever did a photo op, we did a photo op with Sid Haig at a con when he was it was the first time he was doing the Captain Spaulding in full makeup and gear, and we got the pre thing, but they didn't take your money yet. So we saw that all the VIP people, and they had this huge long line, and we're like, oh man, this is gonna take us forever, and blah blah blah. And his handler was like the nicest guy in the entire world, man. He was like, oh no, this line looks ridiculously huge, but trust me, these things fly by. You'll get in. And then, okay, we get to the line, we go through, it does go in. We get to the part where I'm supposed to, pay my money before I go into the photo op. And we were having problems with the card, reading my card. And I'm like, oh my God. And Sid was being so super nice. He's like, oh man. So we were like one of the last people where he was like, oh man, I got it. I'm not leaving until you get this photo. So, and like I said, it was kind of cool. We had that interaction. He put the hat on Mrs. Devil's head, and we had a cool one. So that's the cool thing about with the photo ops. It's like even the Pee Wee Herman one. The Pee Wee Herman one was probably the longest because most photo ops, even if you have a billion people there, they go by quick. I was in Pee Wee Herman's line for over 4 hours for a photo op, which is insane. Like most photo ops are usually done within an hour or two. That was the craziest photo op time I've ever been. But then again, like I said,
I remember that, Devil. I was off looking for Elvira during that time.
Yeah. That's what I said. I did the whole convention. I got there the time it started at 5. It was ending at 10. And the two things that I got to do was meet Tim Curry and Pee Wee Herman, which, yes, most people would be getting kind of pissed. And I had my little bit. I was like, oh, damn it, really, Espen? But in hindsight, I'm glad that, like I said, especially with Tim's health being as bad as it is now, and, you never know. Like I said, luckily he's still with us now, but that, and then when Pee Wee Herman passed away, I'm like, man, I'm glad I pulled the trigger. So that's the cool thing about going to these cons is like, just, that's what's cool about, especially with the New Jersey HorrorCon we're talking about with them. They're still waiting to upload a couple more guests, but they're one of the only cons that put their auto prices right up begin with before the con.
Yeah.
Where a lot of other cons, you usually have to wait until the con starts and you get to see what everybody's taking photos of. So I like that. That's kind of cool that they do that too, because then you can go and let's say you have yourself a $200 budget, you can go, okay, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. Or if you're like, oh man, this guy's auto's too much, well, let me do a photo op instead because I can get two people and we'll do a photo op instead. And because that way, at least, like I said, the photo ops, I love doing the photo ops. At least, like I said, at least you get that interaction. Sometimes it is a little bit quicker. I mean, I've gone to photo ops where it's like, hey, hi. But then, sometimes you have that one, where you may get a couple more extra seconds. The photographers are trying to push you out. But then if the guest is still talking to you, I'm like, oh, I know we're supposed to leave, but I'm not going to be rude to the guest. The guest is still talking to me. I'm not going to be like, hey, they want me to leave. I'm like, hey, man, they're the star. So until that star tells me, hey, bye, I'm going to still have a conversation with them.
Absolutely. So bringing it back, of course, to New Jersey HorrorCon and stuff like that, what would you say would be something like that you would really dig, brother, about like that maybe since there's some announcements to go that they can come out with, that they've said they are still waiting on to put out a few things. What's some stuff that like you're looking forward to? Like me personally, I would love to see maybe some more musicians in kind of like the horror genre. Personally, I'm kind of jonesing a little bit for those to be some announcements. Personally, I would really love some like Chud. He was was one of our interviews at the last New Jersey HorrorCon, but like I would love some like horror punk or like goth rock or goth metal type bands. And we had mentioned our buddies in American Grimm, so it's going to be great to see them again. But I would personally love to see some creepy musicians personally. But how about yourself, man? What would you like to see possibly get announced, or what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you with the musicians. I think there are some musicians that do, and then, like I said, there are some musicians that people try to get that are the bigger names, like with the Alice Coopers, where we've seen them at cons, or like the Corey Taylors from the Slipknots. That are kind of, I mean, you don't have to go necessarily that big. You can get more. There are I don't think he'd really been doing cons much, but you had Twiggy from Marilyn Manson has done cons. Wednesday 13 does cons. Charlie from Anthrax does cons. So I mean, you definitely have musicians that do cons. So yeah, I'm down with that. And it's kind of weird, and it's kind of weird not seeing them. But then people go like, "Why were they here?" Even wrestlers. Bring in some old school wrestlers, you know what I mean? You can like I said, you can throw in the big names. You have your Undertakers and stuff like that are big. You don't have to necessarily get those big guys, but you can just keep, you can get a Hacksaw Jim Duggan or somebody crazy like that and get it. Because I mean, I've met I've been lucky enough to meet a few wrestlers, wrestlers at horror cons before, and yeah, that's always a cool experience. I mean, most people like wrestlers and stuff like that. I mean, with those, you kind of go kind of maybe the old schooler wrestlers versus like the newer ones, but you can still throw in some, I mean, I know like you don't try to do like the smaller wrestling federations, but you could throw some of those in there once in a while. But like, you can throw in some AEW guys or like I said, especially the old school wrestler guys. Those guys are pretty easy to get, and they're usually pretty cheap. I mean, unless you're going to the tops, like you said, your Undertakers or your Hogans or something like that. Those guys are going to cost you a little bit more money because those guys are huge names. But like someone like a Hacksaw or like Gangrel or something like that, those guys would be cool to get because one is like everybody knows that you love Gangrel being a vampire. But yeah, it's horror related too. You could throw him in there. You can throw in some of these kind of guys. You can throw
AEW, like a guy like Darby Allin, who's like got this kind of half skeleton persona, or even in the WWF, and they're kind of becoming bigger stars with every passing moment. But if a con was able to pull the trigger on like the Judgment Day, they're kind of a gothy faction and stuff like that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like people are going to come flocking for Rhea, myself and Mrs. Van.
Yeah. But those are the bigger name. But those are the bigger name ones. I mean, I'm not saying
somebody like Damian Priest or Finn Balor with his demon persona and stuff like that. Yeah. So that would be cool. Some more wrestlers would be pretty rad. I definitely agree with you on that one, Devil.
Yeah, and stuff like that. I mean, and I said that's the cool thing about going to these cons too. Like, we have to talk a little bit about it, but like when you go into the vendors, like, you know, go and talk to some of these guys who are authors that are there, or some of these directors that are these low budget kind of indie directors. I mean, sometimes I mean, granted, not all of them are going to be the best books in the entire world. Not all of them are going to be the best movies in the world. It's just like anybody else. I mean, like another person that's always fun to get. He goes to a bunch of cons is go and see Lloyd Kaufman and things like that with the Troma guys. Those guys are always fun. But like I said, you never know. I mean, Troma guys and all big directors at one time were these small indie directors that too. You know what I mean? You look at like the Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff like that, where he started off with Brain Dead, and you got Sam Raimi, who's a huge director now with Spider-Man and all that, doing Evil Dead. So I mean, you never know that guy that table who has a movie right now called Chicken Lovers Part 7, going from outer space into my loving infection, or something like that title. Yeah, it sounds like shit right now, but who knows? They might write the next movie he writes might be a killer script. Someone's like, hell yeah, I want to get part of that, and all of a sudden now he's doing these big budget movies, and like I said, so it's cool to go and meet those guys too, because it's like, yeah, man, you get, all 99.9% of directors that are huge, especially in the horror genre, big, huge horror genre directors started off as shitty directors of low budget movies too. Not everybody could always be the super ones like we've talked about with the Wes Cravens and the John Carpenter. Even those movies, even their movies to
You
begin
brought up
with.
Terrifier earlier.
Yeah, Terrifier. I mean, look at
That started as like a Kickstarter, man, for
yep.
with like a $50,000 budget for the first movie. And then the second movie's budget was $250,000, but made like 10 million.
Yeah.
And we're not that far out in a few months from the third one.
Yeah. I mean, you got, like I said, you got those ones like that. I mean, like the people who did the Blair Witch. I mean, you got to look how low. I mean, that's still. I mean, Terrifier. I'd have to look and see if Terrifier beat the record. But as far as I know, right now, Blair Witch still holds the record for the most money ever made versus how much money they spent to make the movie. It's like insane, like the budget versus how much they made. And as I said, you never know. I mean, go and meet these guys. And then, like I said, with the merch too, you gotta always find cool shit, man. I mean, it's always a lot of cool vendors selling stuff, a lot of artists doing their paintings or drawings, all this kind of stuff. So it's always cool to go around there. Like, I know you want to spend a lot of time and go see these, these guests and the celebrities and stuff like that. Even if you're doing one day, man, like let's say you're there, the con runs for 6 hours or 8 hours that day. Lot yourself some time for, obviously, for breaks. You want to keep yourself hydrated in these things. You want to eat, but give yourself a little bit of time for that, a little time for resting, because you're walking around all day. It does get tiring if you're there for one day. Then you slot a little hours. Okay, this is my X time for celebrities. It's my X time for chill and eating, and this is my X time for going and seeing some vendors. You know what I mean? Those guys are all there paying their hard money to be able to go to these cons and sell their wares and go and check them out. It's been announced that he's going to be at this one, and he's going to be at the another con, which Horror Show Jack, a friend of ours who did your things and a good friend of mine. I've known him for years. He's always there. Go and see him. I know he looks a little scary, and he might smell a little weird once in a while, but
Teddy bear.
he's partly harmless.
Little bit.
Yeah, he's just
He doesn't bite.
not hard. I mean, unless you ask. I mean, he's pretty cool about consent. I mean, he'll bite hard, but he's consensual.
Absolutely, man, for sure. So as we draw towards the end of our preview of what started as a preview, but it's been just also a great discussion as well. Again, we want to thank again the invitation from New Jersey HorrorCon to allow myself and my beloved Devil to come out to Edison, New Jersey in 2 weeks as of the recording of this. 2 weeks, but that is the weekend of the 9th, 10th, and 11th. So we are really looking forward to that, August 9th, 10th, and 11th. in Edison, New Jersey. So it's going to be a great time. Come on out. We will be there. We are really looking forward to seeing all of our beloved Fangs and getting to talk to you guys about what you enjoy when it comes to these cons. And come and talk to us, because we're incredibly approachable. And yes, of course, we love to talk to our heroes. We love to talk about the people that we find interesting. But just like Devil talked about, you also never know what you might learn, who you might run into, and what they might be talking about. Previous con, I met a very, very nice gentleman who literally writes a series of Dracula books. That is very interesting, and he was fantastic. But again, come and talk to us. Make conversation with us. We'd love to hear what brings you guys out to cons, as for a good time, friends, family, and all that great stuff. But we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Edison, New Jersey, New Jersey Horror Con, for the likes of Tom Matthews, Ken Foree, the Revenge of the Nerds reunion, the Nightmare on Elm Street reunion, the return Night of the Demons, and all the great things in between, like the Monster Squad and like everything that you guys enjoy. So we will see you guys very, very soon. For the Devil, for the Vampire, take care. 2 weeks. Horns up. Fangs out.